So Jay-Z, the rapper, former drug dealer, strikes a deal with the NFL, and people are just very upset about this. They are just, yeah, exactly. They got their panties all twisted up. My take is, so what? Okay, he's a former drug dealer. He's a rapper now. He got this deal with the NFL after criticizing the NFL. You know what? I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem. I don't see what the problem is. Maybe you do. I don't know. 663-1270 is the phone number right here in the studio. 663-1270. Jim Walsh for Super Talk 1270. Streaming online at supertalk1270.com. Tommy Lauren, who's one of these Fox News people. I've heard of her. I'm not intimately familiar. No, that's not a joke. It's not a sexist joke. No. Tommy Lauren is slamming this new partnership between Jay-Z, the rapper, and the NFL. The story behind the story is the NFL and Jay-Z, who has an entertainment and sports representation company, are teaming up to sponsor events and social activism. And this Tommy Lauren is not happy about it. Tommy Lauren, she's 27 years old. How do you get a gig on Fox at the age of 27? Well, I'll tell you how. You whore yourselves out and just tell people exactly what they want to hear. That's how you do it. If that's not whoring, in a manner of speaking, I don't know what is. But she tweeted the following: Jay-Z will be consulting with the NFL for the Super Bowl halftime show and other performances because apparently the league doesn't hate America and law enforcement officers at a level satisfactory enough for the former drug dealer. All right, let's address this former drug dealer thing, all right? We've all done things in our life that we're not proud of, a lot of us, including certain sitting and former presidents of the United States. But we're not going to make this into a Trump thing, hopefully. Although he kind of has a way of working his way into every conversation, doesn't he? I mean, if people have a national debate about toilet paper, he's got a tweet about it. You know, I've got the finest toilet paper. It's the greatest. It's Trump toilet paper with pictures of me. Actually, I'd buy that, but never mind. Tommy Lauren apparently has a problem with Jay-Z being a former drug dealer, and to a point I can understand it. But here's the thing. There are plenty of people in the world with checkered pasts who I'm sure Tommy Lauren doesn't have a problem with, and people like her. You know, if you can forgive Ted Nugent for draft dodging by befouling his underwear during the Vietnam, I think you can cut a break to Jay-Z for being a former dope dealer. And by the way, there are different levels of dope dealer. You know, everybody says, well, he was a former dope dealer. No surprise there. What I'm curious about is what kind of dope he was dealing, because not all dope is created equal. If he was dealing just weed, I would have no problem at all with that, because I've been advocating legal weed for years. I don't use the stuff. No, I don't use the stuff. I don't like weed. It makes me sleepy. Believe me, the last thing I need in my life is something else to make me sleepy. But back to the issue at hand here. Jay-Z, and we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll assume that he was, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to assume for the moment that he was not dealing with the hard stuff. He was probably just dealing with the softer end of the dope. Weed, maybe a little cocaine here, maybe. Cocaine can be harsh stuff, but the point is he moved beyond it. To me, the fact that a guy went from being a drug dealer in Chicago to becoming a music magnate, to becoming a very rich man in the music world, to me, that's something to admire about the guy. The fact that he rose above his squalid, less than humble beginnings and made himself a multi-millionaire businessman. To me, that just shows how far you can go. And the fact that he started out as a drug dealer and rose above all that just indicates to me that he went that much further than, say, a guy who was, born rich, like certain certain presidents who shall remain nameless. Yeah. Hey, Dad, I want to start out in business. Can I have $10 million? Yeah. Sure, Donnie. Here. Anyway, back to Tommy Lauren. Where did he get these people anyway? Number here, by the way, we're talking about primarily it's Jay-Z and whether Jay-Z is, whether you're cool with the idea of Jay-Z and this partnership with the NFL, because I don't have a problem with it. I don't see it as hating America. Shut up about that. All right, just shut your pie hole. Just shut up about it. Come on. NFL. The NFL's a business. And I don't know if you've heard, but in fact, this was on the news this morning. Football is in trouble in this country. Football is having attendance problems. Nobody ever thought that would happen. I think everybody assumed that football was too big to fail. Well, it's starting to fail. It's not going to go under anytime soon. It's not like a case of hitting the iceberg and they're breaking out the Welsh hymns necessarily. A little Titanic reference there. I'm a history buff. But the fact is, football does not have the allure with America's youth in this country like it once did. And the people who run the National Football League, they're businessmen. They're in the business of putting butts in the seat. If they think Jay-Z is their guy to do that and to play to their demographic or target demographic or their potential target demographic, where's the problem? It's business. And the fact that he started out many years ago dealing weed on the streets of Chicago, where does that come into play except to say, hey, wow, he rose above it. He's beyond all that. He started out as a weed dealer in the Windy City, and now he's all this. Where's the problem? I don't get it. Well, I do get it. I think it has mostly it has to do with how can I put this? He being of the non-Caucasian persuasion, if you catch my drift. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's what it's always about. You know exactly that's what it's about. And if we were talking about, if it was Kurt Schilling or Ted Nugent, these people would not be having, everybody would be flipped, I guess. I'd be having the opposite conversation. But two wrongs don't make a right. And the bottom line is, Jay-Z is not a bad guy because at one time in his life he dealt drugs. The key word there, former drug dealer. The key word there is former. All right? If you forgive Ted Nugent for doing what he did during Vietnam, you could give Jay-Z a pass for having dealt some weed as a kid. We all do stupid crap when we're young and chasing a buzz. Come on, we all do. I've done things in my life that I'm not proud of. I'm not going to talk about them here. Well, maybe later. That's kind of what they pay me to do when you think about it, right? Yeah. Never mind. But let's talk about it here. 663-1270, Jim Walsh on Supertalk 1270, supertalk1270.com. We're talking football. Sort of. Jay-Z, one of the guys who supported Colin Kaepernick when he did what he did back in the day. Seems so long ago now. Anyway, not Colin Kaepernick, but Jay-Z, former rapper, former drug dealer. Apparently some people can't get past that. He's got this sports representation company, and they're teaming up with the NFL for social activism and social events because, frankly, the NFL is in trouble. They need to promote themselves properly with their target audience, which, of course, includes a lot of young male African Americans. Well, there you go. Jay-Z, why is there a problem with this? Who's got a problem with this? It's not about if you don't like hip-hop. Hell, I don't care much for hip-hop. I'm an old rock and roller, I came of age with the Beatles and the Stones, man. I came of age, I was not the Woodstock generation. I came right after that. I'm a rock and roll guy. I'd like to see more of the really good rock acts doing halftime. But I also realize we live in the real world where we have to they have to target a certain audience, and I'm okay with that. Look, if they put an act on during halftime that I don't like, you know what I do? I get up, I go to the bathroom, I get another corn dog, I sit down, get ready for the second half of the game. Now, it's just, I don't get the big deal that some people make out of these things. This Tommy Lauren, who sprang out of nowhere, I don't know, where do they find these people? Like Laura Ingraham. What did she ever do? She was a half-assed lawyer who got a gig in the White House under some Republican president. Those are her credentials and her ability to tell a lot of people what they want to hear politically. Those apparently are the credentials of people like this. And this Tommy Lauren, she goes all off on a tear on social media because Jay-Z is now consulting with the NFL for the Super Bowl halftime show and other performances because, in her words, apparently the league doesn't hate America and law enforcement at a level satisfactory enough for the former drug dealer. Shut up. We know what it's about. If Jay-Z's name were Brent Montgomery and he were, say, a Christian rock artist from, say, Utah, would Tommy Lauren have a problem with him? Suppose he was still a drug. And that's the other thing. We're so selective about judging people based on their past. Some people, we never let them forget what they did when they were young and chasing a buzz. And let's face it, we all did a lot of really stupid crap. If you didn't, I feel sorry for you. Because that's how you learn. That's how you become a better person. You dealt some dope in life. I know some people who dealt some dope in life in younger years. Dealt some weed, maybe. You know what? It's not necessarily a reason to hold it against them 40 years later. And if Jay-Z started out dealing some weed on the streets of Chicago, it only indicates to me what a great businessman he's become and how admirable it is that he was able to rise above that. I'm getting the exact opposite impression here about the guy. The fact that he started at such a low level and rose to this. To me, it's admirable what the guy did. To me, it's a cool thing. I think the NFL probably made a good call here. Even though I myself am not a hip-hop artist, and I'm not going to try to pander to people who don't like hip-hop. Unlike Tommy Lauren, I'm going to try to say what I think, for the most part. But some people got a problem with this. If you do, tell me why. Number here is 663-1270. I mean, is it really that big deal one way or the other? Come on. Now, there are a lot of angles on this story. There are people on the left and in the African American community who criticize Jay-Z for getting involved with the NFL. They still have issues with the NFL with things like the Kaepernick situation and all that. And let's not go there because that's kind of a whole different argument. It may or may not be a valid argument. Again, my thought is these people are business people. They're in this to make business, to make money, to turn a profit. And the NFL is having some issues with that right now. So why not hire a guy who knows how to attract an audience? Presumably, a lot of the same kind of audience that the NFL wants. What is really wrong with that? The fact that he's a former drug dealer? I bet you a lot of those Republican clowns in Congress right now, they probably dealt a little bit of weed during their college days. Sure they did. It was a very common thing. And in my opinion, it's not necessarily that bad a thing. If they can rise above it, if they can get to a point where they are supposedly in an admirable echelon of society, why not Jay-Z? What's the difference? Besides the fact that he's got this permanent suntan going. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Here's the deal with Jay-Z, and I love his attitude. Jay-Z says, I know business. As a former drug dealer, I know how to do business with people. Some people think that's terrible. I don't. It actually kind of makes sense, If there's any area in life, if there's any kind of business where you're going to learn quickly or not make the cut, so to speak, or die, or wind up in prison for the rest of your life, or wind up in some kind of deep trouble, if there's any area in life where you better know what you're doing, it's dealing drugs. So it seems to me that Jay-Z, you don't have to like what he did, but let's not write off the skills that he obviously acquired in doing it. He was smart enough, whatever he dealt with, whatever he was dealing, he was smart enough, A, to get out of it eventually, and B, to not get himself killed or wind up in prison for the rest of his life. So at least let's give him that. He's obviously, if nothing else, he's a savvy businessman and a good marketer. And the NFL kind of needs more of that right now. You know, they don't want a good role model. They want a guy who understands business and how to help them get more business. Seems to me that this Jay-Z guy fills the bill on both counts. So stop giving the NFL a hard time about this, Tommy Lauren. Seriously, where do they come up with these people? You find somebody who looks halfway decent on TV and they know all the 3 or 4 important Fox News talking points. Next thing you know, they wake up the next morning, they got their own syndicated TV show on the Fox network. Because, why? Because they can whore themselves out and tell you what you want to hear? Yeah, that's a version of whoring. Don't tell me it isn't. It is. It's also a very amoral thing when you think about it. Making a living telling somebody what they want to hear, whether it's right or not, with no apparent consideration of possible consequences. Tell me how that's morally any better than being a drug dealer on the streets of Chicago. Seems to me you're kind of doing the same thing. You're giving people something they want that they can't get from somewhere else because a lot of people think it's not a good thing to have. Doesn't sound very different to me at all. So, Tommy Lauren, forget about her. Jay-Z has been open about his past as a drug dealer. Again, check off in the list in his favor. In 2013, he told Vanity Fair magazine the experience readied him for the difficult world of the music business, and he wanted to utilize his knowledge to help athletes who struggle with money. Well, he wants to make money, but again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's my point. So let's get over this former drug dealer. You know what it's all about. It's the same problem they have with the guy who was in the White House before Trump. Yeah, and has everything to do with the pigmentation of the situation, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. All right. Moving on. And by the way, the number here, 663-1270. Another gun story. These gun stories, let me find this one here. It happened in Florida. We should just have a whole category for the show called It Happened in Florida, okay? Guy was going down a supermarket aisle when he got blocked by a Coca-Cola delivery guy stocking the shelves. And the guy got upset and they had an argument, and this one guy pulled up his shirt. Not the delivery guy, the other guy. The guy pulled up his shirt and he said, "Look at this. I got a gun. I'm going to shoot you in the head if you don't get out of my way." Yeah. Over blocking the aisle in a 7-Eleven with a Coca-Cola delivery guy. Well, we all know how dangerous they are. Yeah, that took a lot of courage, didn't it, pal? Yeah, it took a lot of nads right there to show the heat you were packing to one of those evil, dangerous Coca-Cola delivery people. Yeah, maybe it's a Pepsi guy. I don't know. My point is this: if you're that kind of chicken crap kind of guy who would show off your gun and threaten people over blocking your aisle in a 7-Eleven store, you got no business having a damn gun. All right, can we agree on that, please? Thank you. And by the way, that thing with the gun doesn't always work out like you would think. I lived in Ocean City, Maryland many years ago, and there was a situation, kind of a similar situation, except it involved a nightclub, and they had this big, burly, giant bouncer who apparently was a good guy, and he knew his job well. He knew how to handle people physically. He's a bouncer, big, probably an ex-Marine or a former football player or something like that. And some clown came in one night trying to talk his way in to this nightclub, and he didn't have the proper credentials. So the bouncer told him, "Hey, hit the bricks, pal. Get out of here." And the guy pulled up his shirt and he said, "Hey, look at this. See what I got?" It was a gun. And then he pulled up and said, "Hey, see what I got? Check this out." And this bouncer guy, he made a fist and he says, "Yeah, check this out." Bam! Clocked him. Clean out. Right into the next week, as my daddy used to say. That Pack and Heath thing doesn't always work out the way you want it to. I'm just saying. All right, 663-1270 is Jim Walsh here at Super Talk 1270 with more conversation and more of your calls coming up here. Hang on. I'm going to go get me another cup of Joe. Got to have me a big old cup of Joe. Big old Jeroboam of Java. All right, we're talking about Jay-Z. He got a gig with the NFL, sort of a consulting thing where they're going to put together these shows and these social events, social activism, that kind of thing. And some people have a real issue with the fact that he used to be a drug dealer. My take is, so what? Who cares? He's a good businessman. He seems to have learned something dealing weed on the streets of Chicago. Well, why hold that against him? Everybody's done something stupid when they're young, right? Get over it. 663-1270. See, now you know why I am working as a talk show host in Bismarck, North Dakota. It's not because I'm not that good. Well, I'm not, but there's plenty of talk show hosts who are not that good who are working in the big time. Believe me, I could rattle off a list of names as long as my arm. But I don't like to pander to the conservative thing, and that's all it's about this day in my industry. That's why talk radio is such a joke. Oh, it's terrible. It used to be a talk show. You had one guy with 1,000 opinions. Now it's 1,000 guys, one opinion. Every talk show, just about every talk show I tune in, 99.9% of them, you can tune in, on any given day, you can turn on the show and A, what the guy's going to talk about, and B, what his take on the subject is going to be. Usually A is Trump, and B is, the guy walks on water. He's wonderful. He can do no wrong. Well, and here I sit. Yes, no good deed goes unpunished. But, hey, I like what I do. I like the way I do it. I'm nobody's hero. I'm just an a-hole with a lot of opinions, and I want to keep it that way. Just want to have some fun here doing it my way. Anyway, so we got the Jay-Z thing going on here, and my point, I just don't get the problem people have with this guy. If you don't like hip-hop, that's fine. That's one thing. But let's face it, they're having a real issue with young black Americans losing interest in football for whatever reason. Young white Americans, too. Just young Americans in general don't have the football apparently doesn't have the allure to the upcoming generation that it once has. And I don't know why. I mean, you could point to a lot of issues, video games or whatever. But it's something that the NFL has to figure out how to deal with. So good for them for finding somebody who apparently knows what they're doing in attracting that kind of target demographic and getting them to spend their money. Why anybody should have a problem with that, I don't know. All right, 663-1270. Jim Walsh on Super Talk 1270. School is starting up, and I have a question for you. If you're a parent or a grandparent, you're involved in getting your kids ready for the school year, would you put your kids in a car with a stranger? A lot of parents are doing it now, not just here, but it's a national thing. Ride-sharing companies, of course, they've changed the rules of the game in a lot of ways for society. But now we learn that some parents are using Uber and Lyft to transport their kids to school. Now, it seems like a logical solution to a common problem. You can't realistically always be there to pick up or drop off your kids from school or activities, so you call an Uber or a Lyft. But think about this. Here's the problem some people have. What you're doing, you're putting your little kid, and let's assume if you're getting your kid a ride to school, we will assume that they're under driving age, obviously, and they're probably too young to walk to school or get there on their own power somehow. But the problem some people have is what you're doing is you're putting your kid alone in a car with a stranger, and that's just way too creepazoid for some folks. And the drivers are wary about it too, because they can be accused of anything. Now, the ride companies do have some age restrictions in place, but a lot of drivers do it anyway, and some parents are okay with that. And I wonder if it's really such a bad thing because, hey, have you seen some of the degenerates they have driving school buses these days? Is it really logical to be more concerned about the guy driving your Uber or your Lyft? Well, how do you deal with something like that? If you have an issue with getting your kid to and from school every day and they're too young to get there on their own, how are you going to deal with it? I welcome your creative input on this because it is something that folks have to deal with, and maybe Uber or Lyft are not necessarily the best way to go about it. So if you have a thought about this, please let me know. I would like very much to hear from you. 663-1270, 663-1270. This whole controversy started, it's controversy everywhere. It started apparently in Florida. Now, the Uber policy is the rider has to be at least 18 to have an Uber account and request rides. If you're under 18, you have to be accompanied by an adult, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of, I think, putting the kid in the car, right? Now, the policy for Lyft, unaccompanied minors are prohibited from traveling with most carriers. A passenger must be 18. Again, the restriction seems to be you have to be 18 or accompanied by someone who is at least 18. Yet a lot of people are looking the other way on this. And it seems to me that there are probably better ways that you can come up with to accomplish the same thing, and there'll be a lot less of a risk involved. Although, again, I look at some of the people, not all, but some of the people you got driving school buses, and it was no different when I was a kid 50 years ago. You wonder, why are these people allowed on the street, let alone driving a busload of kids to school every day? I don't know what the rationale is behind that, but give me your ideas, please. Number 663-1270. Love to hear from you. Jim Walsh, Super Talk 1270, with more conversation. Your calls coming up. Well, the long-awaited medical marijuana dispensary has officially opened in the city of Bismarck. And wait a minute, the world did not come to an end? Huge cracks are not appearing in the Earth's surface. We don't have dinosaurs warring on distant planets. Society is not crumbling into non-existence. Nah, just a few sick people who need a little weed to make them feel better. Not a damn thing wrong with that. Finally, 663-1270. And God knows they drag their feet long enough. Oh, we can't let this happen. Reefer madness. Yeah, the reefer madness thing, it doesn't have the hefty ones did. But they got it. They got it going. Finally, medical marijuana dispensary, Harvest of Bismarck. The first of its kind in central North Dakota, located at 1207 Memorial High. Hey, it's on the Strip, right up the street here. All right. And again, we're talking medical marijuana here. Let's not get crazy. They got some stories here about folks who drove in from different parts of the state nearby. Lady from Hazen drove in with her sister-in-law. Because again, it's the same thing as people who are sick. They have arthritis, back problems, other things. They tried the pills. It didn't really work. But it does help. It does help a lot of people, so why would you want to keep it away? Oh, because hippies smoke it. Yeah. And Negroes. Oh, that's the big one, right? I mean, that's how marijuana got outlawed to begin with. That's what it was all about back in the day. It was about them jazz musicians smoking the wacky tobacco. And, they're Negroes. That was, you better believe that was the rationale behind it all. Don't believe for 1 minute it wasn't. So let's get over that and move on. I'm happy to report we've actually taken a very small tentative step into the 21st century with another medical marijuana dispensary. You got a problem with that? Fine, stay home. Don't have any weed. Let the rest of us have more. 663-1270. Jim Walsh here for Super Talk 1270. Online at supertalk1270.com. Urban Harvest happening tomorrow. Got to check that out. My got some friends and business associates who are involved in putting that together. My old co-worker, comrade at arms, Stacy Sturham, who now does the online internet thing in town. And, of course, Mike Swenson, wonderful gentleman. He's also involved in that. So I urge everybody to get on out there and support the Urban Harvest tomorrow afternoon in downtown Bismarck. Some other, this is at the point of the show where we kind of have the miscellaneous categories, different things, just the lightning round, we call it. We like to throw these things on and off the air and just comment on them very quickly. Kurt Schilling is considering running for Congress. Trump approves, of course. Put a bloody sock in it, pal. Here's a great question. Here's the kind of question that if I could, I would devote a whole show to this because it would be funny as hell. Here's the question. How often do you feel like you have to wash your sheets on your bed? What my daddy used to call your bedclothes. Your sheet, your top sheet, your pillowcases, whatnot. Somebody on the internet, because somebody on the internet's always doing something about everything. Somebody actually, it was the National Sleep Foundation. Well, good for them. They actually conducted a poll trying to get an idea of how often people clean their sheets, how often you should wash your sheets, how often you do wash your sheets, how to wash your sheets, and whether you need pajamas or not, or you sleep au natural. Yeah. Going commando in the old sackaroo, right? Yeah. That's a different thing. But let's see. I think the general consensus, if I can find it here, general consensus is the average is 2 weeks. That most people on an average of every 2 weeks wash their sheets. I would think once a week would probably be more. Now, I admit my wife and I, we kind of do it when we get around to it. It's usually about 2 weeks, every other week, every 2 or 3 weeks. And we should probably do it more often because we have 2 cats, and the cats do share the bed with us. And we love having them in bed with us, but that's probably not the cleanest thing in the world, having cats in your bed with you. And all that cat. And I'm fiercely allergic to cat hair anyway. So, yeah, the general answer, probably the most common answer you're going to get to the question of how often you wash your bed sheets is A, not often enough. So we'll leave it at that. But that'd be a fun time. God, I'd love to just do a whole show on that. That'd be my whole career. Build my whole career about talking every day about nothing but how often people wash their sheets. Yeah. Did you ever just, your sheets are kind of gamey, so you just kind of take them off, and you feel real lazy, so you crawl in the sack, and it's too cold to sleep without anything, but you just kind of grab your top spread and just quilt or whatever, and you just pull it over you for the night. Yeah, I've done that. Well, I was a bachelor for most of my middle-aged years. Yeah, I've done that. And ain't a damn thing wrong with it. It's a free country. Live like you want to live. Hallelujah. Praise Jesus. All right. There was a couple other. We got to mention this Chris Cuomo thing. So Chris Cuomo, he got into a confrontation. He was out with his family, apparently, and he got into a confrontation with some guy who started calling him not a Guido. No, he called him a Fredo. Now, that's kind of stupid for a number of reasons. But I need to point out something. Chris Cuomo claims that he interprets Fredo as being an ethnic slur against Italian Americans. And I'm not Italian, but I grew up with a lot of Italians in a city that had its own Little Italy back east, Wilmington, Delaware. And by the way, some great Italian restaurants you got to love. And I'm not talking about like Olive Garden. I'm talking about real Italian restaurants with real Italian food prepared by real Italians. You got to go to one of them bigger towns that has a Little Italy and check that out for yourself. We need a Little Italy in Bismarck. Oh, we'll probably have one eventually. We'll probably get one eventually. I sure hope so. Get some of that homegrown Italian. We're just now getting homegrown Mexican, right? And just in the last few years, we're getting the Tex-Mex thing going. People are doing it right now. And then the next thing is to get some Italians to move into Bismarck so we can have some great homegrown mom-and-pop authentic Italian-American cuisine, by which I do not mean Olive Garden. Carino's is okay, but I'm talking about the real genuine homegrown stuff. Carino's is okay, but it's that franchisey thing they got going. But they are better. It's better than nothing, I guess. Anyway, so Chris Cuomo of the Cuomo family, he comes from these people like the Kennedys in New York State. I mean, the dad, Mario Cuomo, he was governor of New York for many years. And by the accounts of many, he did a fine job. They talked about him for president at one point. And his son, one of the sons, became governor. And now the other son, Chris Cuomo, he's a commentator for CNN. He was out with his family, and he kind of ran into this guy who started insulting him and calling him a Fredo. Well, Fredo, you might recall from The Godfather, which is actually it was Godfather 2. Fredo was one of the brothers. You had Don Corleone and he had his sons. He had his adopted son, who was James Caan. He had his son, Michael, and then there was Fredo. And there was a whole thing involving Fredo in the second movie, which I'm not going to spoil for you, except for the classic line, one of the all-time classic Hollywood lines, "You broke my heart, Fredo," which I may have just told you what happens to Fredo, but anyway. So Fredo, it's not a slur so much as it is an Italian-American reference to the proverbial stupid brother in the family. Maybe that's what he was getting at. He had his dad who was the governor, and people thought he should be president. You had the son who's the governor, and now you got this guy who's just a commentator. Well, he must be the Fredo in the family. I guess that's where he was going. I don't know. But the point is, Mr. Cuomo, he kind of overreacted to it, said he was going to throw the guy down a flight of stairs and all that business. I definitely do not approve of the way he reacted. He should have rolled with it. There's a lot of ways you can deal with something like that, but when you become an adult, you learn to pick your battles, and one thing you don't want to do is threaten violence on everybody who calls you a stupid, silly name, even if it's a bad one. You got to learn to roll with that kind of stuff, folks. I did. Come on, we're not in junior high school anymore. Yeah, some of those words are very ugly, but you don't fight verbal violence with physical violence. You know what I mean? So I don't agree with Chris Cuomo. But anyway, getting back to the Cuomo thing directly, guess who weighed in on the subject? Yes, of course, our great and glorious, exalted high leader with the orange hair. He had to tweet all about his thoughts on the Chris Cuomo thing, about what a goober this guy is. Now, goober is not an Italian word. Okay, I can say goober. But you know what? I'm actually one of those people who is glad that the president spends so much of his time tweeting. And it's not because I'm a Trump fan. I am not. My take on our current president is that he is essentially the south end of a northbound horse. You get my drift. Now, I'm not a Trump fan. That's another reason why I don't have a big job in talk radio, because I don't get on every day and go, yeah, Trump's wonderful. Everything he does, he's wonderful. And those people who don't like him, they're retarded. I don't do that. because it's not how I feel in my heart of hearts. But the point is, I think it's great that our president is focusing so much time on this stuff because, frankly, if he wasn't, he'd probably doing some serious damage to the country in some serious area. So, that's why you have a staff. Let the staff do what they do. It's how Nixon learned, Nixon was wigging out over Watergate. He turned over the country to Kissinger. Probably the smartest thing he could do. Yeah. I appreciate you putting up with me for the last hour. Comment supertalk1270.com. Have a good one.